April. My grandfather had paranoid schizophrenia. My father suffered from severe clinical depression. I am a survivor living with post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is Ruthie, my emotional service dog. And I wanted to start with the poem that I wrote one day of many that I was having a panic attack and just groping for words to express what it feels like to be me. It's called The Human Jello Mold. Lost in the lonely space between words, my mind slipped and stayed in the long pause that stretched wide as the cavernous mouth of the earth, which opened to swallow men. And I fall in, fall and fall and fall like Alice down the rabbit hole, like Alice who fell. Only I don't land in Wonderland or any land at all, I just fall. And for a while my stomach floats and turns sour and rancid until I finally settle in to that eternal feeling of unbearable falling, falling into the void between words. My mind fills the gap with feelings too strong to be spoken, and behind my eyes the images of them. But on the outside, my mouth is turned to supple, quivering stone, and I am no more able to speak than a human jello mold, falling in slow motion forever, frozen in that moment when my balance jiggled out of whack and threw me in the air, ever quivering between barely holding my form together and the catastrophic moment I know is coming when I will hit the floor. So ability and disability. So I had these two introductions, giving you a sense of, what am I able to do? Who am I? And this concept of disability. And the fact that I struggle with PTSD. And this feeling of being emotionally frozen and unable to speak. And this is a phenomenon that's just very common among people who do have PTSD. This flashback feeling, this feeling of being sort of emotionally stuck and disabled. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and about various disability issues. The Sidrian Institute for Traumatic Stress, Education and Advocacy writes that about 70% of adults in the United States have experienced trauma at least once in their lives. That lucky 30% who haven't, I don't know who they are. And 20% of those people go on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. An estimated 5% of Americans, more than 13 million people, have PTSD at any given time. According to the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, it defines disability as physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. The ADA was signed in 1990, and it was meant to be a comprehensive piece of civil rights legislation for people with disabilities, giving them the same opportunities to participate in mainstream American life that everyone else has. There are so many disabilities, physical and mental, visible and invisible, that people are living with. Just so you know, you might not know the statistic, about 56.7 million people, 19% of the population, were estimated to have a disability in 2010. And so, it begs us to ask this question: why did we need to pass this legislation? Well, the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it says in Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal with dignity and rights. They're endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. So let's compare that. Where do we see that in Scripture? It's obvious, right? So God created mankind in His own image. In His image, God created them, male and female, He created them. And then in Psalm 139, it says, "You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." And I love how it says in Proverbs 20, it says, "If you falter in a time of trouble, how small is your strength? Rescue those being led away to death. Hold back those staggering towards slaughter. If you say, 'But we knew nothing about this,' does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? not seen. That's her unicorn. That helps me be quiet. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about the fact that, we've seen barbarous things done to people with disabilities around the earth, not just in Nazi Germany, but even today, all over the world. We see these things still happening. In some places, people with disabilities are considered cursed, and they're abused, and they're murdered. And just to, give it some context, in the Long Road to Freedom, Nelson Mandela said, "A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones." And I just want to say that God has called us to embrace our fellow humans as brethren, to lay down our lives for them. And today I just want to ask everyone to think about how in their own ministry contexts, they can be inclusive of people with disabilities. Because we can't just say to God, we don't know anything about this. There are people with disabilities all around us. So in conclusion, I just want to share 3 quick points of what can we do to take action. First, don't assume. Second, be inclusive. And third, listen. I'm going to repeat those again for those of you who study preaching. We're supposed to repeat ourselves, right? So what was the first one? Don't assume. Thanks, Hillary. The first one is don't assume. As I sat down to do this presentation, I wrote down some do's and don'ts of things that I feel like people should do and shouldn't do in their relationship with people who have disabilities. And then I Googled disability etiquette, and I was surprised to find a lot of the things I've written are things shared by others. So here on Wikipedia actually gives a good summary of a few points. And here's a few that resonated with me. Don't assume a person with a disability either wants or requires assistance. That rejection of aid is meant as a personal affront. That upon acceptance of your help, that you know without being told what service to perform. That a person who appears to have one kind of disability also has others. That a disabled person is dissatisfied with his or her quality of life and thus seeking pity. That a person with a disability is easily offended. That a person with a disability does not appear disabled. And then don't assume that a person with a disability will be receptive to personal questions, particularly in a public setting. And I love that example because it's highlighted with a do. Do ask questions if you know a person. And so the second thing, does anyone remember the second thing? The first one was don't assume. The second one was be inclusive. Thank you, Katie. What does be inclusive mean? One way to ponder the concept of being inclusive is universal design. If you've heard of universal design, according to the Center for Universal Design at North Carolina State University, it is the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or for specialized design. So what does that look like? So raise your hand if you've ever had too many things in your arms, and so you hit the little button that has, with your elbow, the little handicap sign on it to open a door. Who's ever done that? Yeah. Most of us have done that. Well, that button was designed for people who are in a wheelchair, but it's useful for many other things, just like a ramp can be useful for a suitcase, or for a mom with a stroller, or for a million other things, not just the person in a wheelchair. And so that concept the idea that we can design our spaces, our places, our ministries in such a way that's accessible to the most people possible. And then the last one, does anyone remember the last one? Listen! Thank you, Kitty. So don't assume, be inclusive, and do listen. And, this week I heard a story of the guy from, his name is Michael Durant, and he's from the story Black Hawk Down, which was a real thing that happened. As a military helicopter went down in Somalia in 1993. And in the interview, he said he thought he was going to die. His friends all died. But he said the reason why he doesn't think he struggles with PTSD is because he had so many opportunities to tell his story. And, we think that possibly in telling his story, he was able to share what he needed, he was able to heal. And one of the things I've spoken on today about disability, I've really chosen to tell it through the lens of my own story, my own PTSD. Because I wanted to give you the chance to model, without even knowing it, as you're sitting there eating, the experience of just listening. listening to a person with a disability, listening instead of assuming, listening to hear someone's needs, to provide an open space for them, to experience God's love, and to do so as a model for the future of your ministries in which you can do that for others. So the last concluding image I'm going to give is, if you've ever seen the sign, motorcycles are everywhere. Has anyone ever seen that sign? The bumper sticker? Motorcycles are everywhere bumper sticker encourages you to keep in mind that the way you look behind you and around you for average-sized vehicles when you're driving may cause you to miss smaller-sized motorcycles and the person who might be perilously close to you, exposed in the open just beside you in your blind spot that you were not looking for. I propose today that persons with disabilities are everywhere. That we shouldn't assume we know what they need, but we should open our hearts and our lives to be inclusive of them. We should listen and look for them and fulfill God's command to love our neighbor. So I just wanted to say thank you for not assuming you knew me today before I started talking. Thank you that you provided a universal space for me to share, be included. And thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you. Next, I want to introduce Marisa. Okay, I'm going to get her name. Barbasio. And she's a third-year MACO student, and she's going to also speak about social justice issues around the issue of disability, specifically autism. And she's right now interning at a high school in Boston with a population that is 99%